to the gods and the earths and everybody around the world. I'm Russell Norman, and this is the new Swahili TV. Today we have a very, very special guest. None other than the iconic, the legendary, the literary genius, the author of the Spook Who Sat by the Door, Sam Greenley. We're going to go in depth into the man, the life, the struggle, and the revolution. So, subscribe right now. I'm your host, Russell Norman, and this is the new Swahili TV. Let's go.
This is Swahili TV, and we are here with the legendary author and poet, Sam Greenley, the writer of The Spook Who Sat by the Door, Baghdad Blues, and countless other poems and short stories. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, brother. How about you?
All right. We're glad to have you here on Swahili TV. We wanted to sort of get in depth and put the truth out there with some things that's going on and get in depth about your life, your journey, the struggle that it took you to write the book and get it to film, the film being banned, and your travels across the world. Let's start with, how are you today?
Okay.
That's good to know. So
I'm glad we finally got some warm weather.
That's true. We done been through a blizzard, and we done been through a lot of ice storms and rain, and some people say a lot of the weather that we see is a sign of the end times. How do you feel about that?
I think it's just Chicago.
It's just Chicago. Yeah, that'll do it.
It was happening before we got here.
Right on.
You know, and if you don't like changing seasons, you should be in Chicago.
Now, this stuff going on around the world, like the Mississippi River flooding, Japan, tsunamis and earthquakes, Haiti. Do you think that this is a sign of things to come?
I think it's a cycle. It's been happening back during the times of the pyramids. Ain't nothing different. You know, you can read about plagues and famine in the Bible. Mm-hmm. You know, it ain't got nothing to do with changing times. Climbing is climbing.
Now, you've been around the world. Speaking of around the world and things happening internationally, you just came back from Ghana. Was that some years ago? You had a lengthy stay in Ghana?
10 years ago.
10 years ago in the south of Spain. Tell us, how is Africa? Because I wanted to go in depth because you've traveled, you've been a part of the U.S. military, the intelligence community, you've been an ambassador for different countries, for the south side of Chicago, and representing the message and getting the truth out there with what's really going on. Do you see any difference? I know the world is a ghetto, but do you see any difference with things that's going on between America and Africa, the south of Spain, the Greek islands?
No. America is the latest lengthy line of imperialist nations that stretches back to the pyramids and beyond. Okay, Europeans didn't invent imperialism. Egypt was imperialistic. Babylon was imperialistic. The Ghanaians had an empire. Dahomey had an empire. The Zulus had an empire. It's not about color. It's not about culture. It's about human greed and the need to overpower other places. When people overpraise Egypt, I have to remind them that when the Egyptians walked into Nubia, okay, they didn't take a referendum, they just took the land. Okay? You expand territory by force of arms. So to pretend that ancient Africa was somehow superior to modern America is nonsense. People are people. There are no superior races. Okay? If we deny that Caucasians are superior, how can we then turn around and claim that we are superior? People are people, man.
And slavery is slavery.
Yes.
No matter which way you cut it.
There you go.
Speaking of imperialistic and America, let's talk about your book, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which was a book about a CIA agent who was trained by the United States Central Intelligence Agency, and he basically came back to the hood and trained the unorganized gangbangers and young revolutionaries, got them organized, and went to war with City Hall, and basically won.
Well, you know, what a lot of people miss is he went into the CIA with a plan. Okay. Many whites assumed that he became radicalized in the CIA because of his treatment there. He was a radical before he went in there. And he pretended to be what he wasn't.
Hence the spook who sat by the door.
Right.
And of course the spook being a term for CIA agents as well.
Right. It's a play on words.
Yes, sir. So, are you the spook who sat by the door, Sam Greenley? Because you were a part of the United States intelligence community and you came out the military to write this book.
I wasn't in intelligence. I was a propagandist.
Okay.
Okay.
Oxymoron, U.S. intelligence community, huh?
Yeah. They're not very intelligent.
So, you've been quoted as saying that you were a part of the lie. At that point, when you were a young man in the military, did this influence you writing this book about going against the government and the imperialistic ways that we see?
Yeah, look, I emerged as a militant activist at the age of 15.
15?
Yeah. My brother and I got off the streetcar on 63rd and Stewart in October 1945. And as we approached the school, we heard people singing Old Black Joe.
Now, what is Old Black Joe?
Old Black Joe is an old folk song. I hear those darkies gently calling Old Black Joe. It's not very... well, it was intended to be an insult, and it was. People who were singing it were some whites sitting on the steps of a frame house across the street from Englewood High School. And they had signs saying, we won't go to school with niggas anymore.
This was in the late 30s?
No, this was in 1945.
45, 15 years old.
Now, a couple of weeks prior to that, a similar incident had occurred at Frable High School in Gary. And this was a copycat measure. We almost had a riot that day. The head of the Board of Education welcomed a delegation of these people who had protested. Now, it's important to understand that it was not the overwhelming majority of whites going to school at that time. It was just a racist minority. But within less than 2 years, he promised them that he would honor any request for transfer. So all of those people who had demonstrated never came back to school. They went to other places, South Shore, Calumet, that kind of thing.
And these were black students?
They were white students.
The racist white students?
Yeah.
Before these predominantly black schools at this time? These were a lot of schools dealing with...
Englewood at that time was half white and half black.
Okay.
Okay.
And a racist minority?
Began to protest, yeah.
Right. And what were they protesting exactly?
Going to school with niggas.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to go to an all-white school.
And this was during World War II, correct? This was, you said 1945.
No, the war ended in 45.
Okay.
You know, it was only a few months after the end of the war.
Were these things adding to the racial conflict or the strife? You know, the war ending, a new emergence of protest with the minorities?
Yeah, it was a continuum. You know, you have peaks and valleys in terms of the racist attitudes of the people, white people in this nation. But it's never going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's little doubt that it's diminished since I was your age. It's not as virulent. I don't think it's widespread, but it's certainly there.
Definitely.
You know, you don't have to look any further than the Tea Party.
Right.
To know it's become the refuge of...
Racist?
Yeah.
Can't even really say it's too covert, actually, huh? It's really overt.
Well, they speak it in code.
Yeah.
You know. They don't say nigger anymore except in private. But you know what they're talking about.
Right.
I mean, when they portray Obama as an African savage with a bone in his nose, you know what that is. The birthers, that's stone racism. You know.
So how do you feel about Obama's recent report that Osama bin Laden was captured and killed? Do you believe it?
I'm not really concerned with whether or not it happened.
Doesn't affect you one way or another?
No. More importantly is the motive and the timing. Okay, whether it was a hoax or whether it was an actual incident, the propaganda now emerging from the White House.
There's a lot of conflicting stories now too coming out.
I don't pay no attention to that shit. You know, conspiracy nuts bore me, man. You know, I think they ought to get a life. The idea that the United States government destroyed the Twin Towers is absurd. I think Al-Qaeda did it.
So you believe the 9/11 story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And you being in the military, as you said, you were a propagandist. A lot of people think this is propaganda with the timing of it to get Obama reelected and things like that. You do not see that. You don't agree.
Don't confuse opportunism with Machiavellian plotting. Okay.
It's one thing to be opportunistic, but another thing to be...
Americans are not good at long-range planning, but they're good at seizing an opportunity.
Okay.
If they see an incident that they can turn into an advantage, they're right on top of it. And I think that's what happened with 9/11. They didn't have to have done 9/11 to do what they did in response to it.
So speaking of going to war with Al-Qaeda and going to Afghanistan and Iraq, and the fact that Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden were former CIA agents for the U.S., that doesn't play into the whole conspiracy, quote unquote?
No, not in my mind.
Because a lot of people think it's just chickens coming home to roost.
Tell me why it would be necessary for the United States government to kill 3,000 innocent civilians and knock down $1 billion worth of real estate.
Well, it can be to galvanize the masses under a common enemy with a common threat, which would be able to take more liberties away from the American people with the way they can tap your phones or your emails with,
They've been doing that all along.
And also make trillions of dollars and go to war and make trillions.
You ain't making no trillions in that war. You're spending trillions.
But the oil, that's the point. The oil, the heroin, all of the things that they supposedly went because of weapons of mass destruction.
There ain't no oil in Afghanistan. And who owns the rights to the oil in Iraq?